This incredible story has been circulating on the internet for a long time. It is very difficult to believe, and it is up to you to decide whether or not it's true. Here is the story told from the words of the main character. When my mother was young, she was in the hospital, and there was a woman with her in the ward. Her name was Natalie. She came from a village, had a very poor understanding of life in the city, and told a lot of interesting stories about life in the village. I loved listening to my mother retelling these stories. Some of them were so incredible that it was simply impossible to believe them. I perceived them as bedtime stories. The most memorable of Natalie's stories was about a cow in their village. Very often I asked my mother to tell me that story about the cow, and my mother always sat down with a smile and started the story. Natalie had lived in the village her whole life. They lived very poorly. The biggest desire of their family was to have a cow, but cows were very expensive and the family could not afford to buy one. Natalie's mother worked as a nurse in a local hospital. Her salary was low and it was only enough to feed the family, where there were 5 children. Natalie was the eldest child in the family. She always helped her mother around the house, cooked dinner, washed the floors and the dishes, and helped take care of her younger brothers and sisters. Natalie's father worked as a tractor driver. He was at work almost all the time, especially in the autumn-spring period when there was active harvest work. His salary was also small, and they used it to buy clothes and necessary things for their house. Each child in the family had their own responsibilities. Natalie, as the eldest, was responsible for her brothers and sisters. When their parents were at work, Natalie was responsible for them. Her duty was to feed them on time, make sure everyone did their homework, and went to bed on time. There was not much food. They mainly ate vegetables, which they grew in their own garden. And every evening they talked about how well they would live if they had a cow. The cow would give them milk, from which they could make sour cream, kefir, cottage cheese, and delicious tortillas. Then the family would definitely have enough food. Then they decided by all means to save up money and buy a cow. The whole family decided that they would no longer buy extra clothes but wear what they had and use this money to buy a cow which would give milk for their family. For almost a year, the parents saved money, and finally the required amount was collected. On their day off, the mom and dad went to the farm to choose their own cow. The dairy farmer promised a good milk yield, and the price was not very high, so Natalie's parents bought this cow without hesitation and took her home. The family's happiness was immense. The cow really turned out to be very good. She gave so much milk that it was more than enough for all the needs of their family. All 7 people drank milk every day. Natalie learned how to make sour cream, cheese, delicious cheesecakes, cottage cheese, kefir, and yogurt. Their table was full of all sorts of different products that can only be produced from milk. Their family was very generous, and they happily treated all of their relatives and friends to the delicious milk of their cow. Soon they had more milk than they could use. Since their cow gave milk of high quality, the family decided to sell the rest of the milk at the market. In the morning, Natalie went into the barn, milked the cow, and brought fresh milk into the house. There, she put the required amount for the family's day, then bottled the rest to sell at the market. Additional money began to come in for the family, and they decided to save it in order to buy a second cow. Everything was great. The family was happy to have such a cow who gave plenty of milk. One morning, Natalie once again went to milk the cow, but the quantity turned out to be much less than usual. Perplexed, Natalie came inside and told her mother. "Maybe she's not feeling well today," her mom replied. "The main thing is that we have enough milk for today and we can go to the market tomorrow." But the next morning, the milk was even less, and then Natalie's parents began to worry. What happened to their poor cow? It was decided to call the veterinarian to examine the cow to see if she was sick. The veterinarian came, carefully examined the cow, but he did not find any problems with her health. He just said that the cow was healthy and that he did not know what could be the reason for a decrease in milk. He advised them to feed her more. Maybe that would help. With the money the family was saving for a second cow, they bought a special feed to improve the lactation for the cow. They fed her this food for a whole month, but it did not help. The amount of milk never increased. The dejected parents decided to ask a local shaman to perform rituals, as maybe the cow was jinxed. They did not really believe this, but they were very desperate. The shaman came, brought some herbs which he burned for a long time in the barn, recited some spells, and placed his hands on the cow. But this didn't help, and the amount of milk became less every day, even though the cow appeared healthy. The family tried in every possible way to find the reason for such a decrease in the amount of milk, but the answer was never found. People came to their home because they could not find Natalie in the market. They really wanted to buy their milk, and they got upset when they learned that there was no more milk for sale. The parents went to the farm where they bought the cow to find out if other cows also had such changes, but they were told that the milk yield had not decreased for the other cows, and the farmer didn't know what could be the problem with their cow. One early morning, Natalie was awoken by a drawn-out howl from the barn. She opened her eyes, and the howl stopped. It must have been a dream, Natalie thought. From her constant thoughts about milk, the girl often dreamed about the cow. But the howl repeated. No, it was not a dream. Something was really happening in the barn. Natalie put on her jacket and rushed out into the yard. Opening the door to the barn, Natalie was dumbfounded. Numb from what she saw, she rushed back to the house. The girl shook her sleeping father and could only utter, "The cow." Her father, seeing the deathly pale face of his daughter and her eyes full of horror, hurried to the barn, but when he entered, he also froze in fear. A large snake was wrapped around the cow's leg, clinging to the cow's udder and eagerly drinking her milk. The father, not knowing what to do, only stood and watched. After the snake had its fill, it slowly slid off the cow's leg and crawled into a hole in the corner. So here is the answer to the mystery of our cow. The snake drank all the milk early in the morning and then quietly crawled away. The same morning, the father tightly repaired the hole in the barn. Natalie said that for a long time she entered the barn with apprehension as she was afraid that the snake would return, but the snake, apparently not finding its usual hole, eventually forgot the way into the barn. There was again plenty of milk, and the family returned to their usual way of life. Natalie started going to the market again. They soon saved up for a second cow, and things got better. Such an incredible story happened in Natalie's life. Do you believe the story? Write your opinion in the comments.